Cole never planned for his morning to fall apart before 8 a.m. His daughter's lunch was forgotten on the kitchen counter. Her school shoes were missing for 11 full minutes. And the coffee he desperately needed burned his hand on the way out the door. He arrived at Hargrove and Lane Financial late, breathless, and already behind. He was a single father in a world that never slowed down for single fathers. But nothing, not the chaos, not the exhaustion, not the permanent dark circles under his eyes, nothing could have prepared him for what was waiting behind the closed door of Diana Hargrove's private office. His boss, the most composed, untouchable woman in the entire building, standing there, panicked, and the look on her face when she turned to face him told Cole that whatever came next was going to change something. He just didn't know how much yet. The door was barely open when Cole froze. Diana Hargrove never looked like this. She stood in the center of her massive office, her back partially turned toward him, one arm twisted awkwardly behind her. Her silver evening gown caught the morning light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was stunning, elegant, the kind of dress that belonged on a magazine cover. But the zipper at the back was stuck, badly stuck, and Diana, the woman who ran boardrooms with a single glance, who could silence a room of 50 executives with one raised eyebrow, was struggling. Quietly, desperately. She didn't hear him come in. Cole stood at the doorway for exactly 3 seconds, weighing his options. He could back out slowly, pretend he saw nothing, send her assistant instead. That was a smart move, the professional move. But her shoulders were tense. Her breathing was shallow. And something about watching a woman that strong fight so hard against something so small made his chest tighten in a way he wasn't ready for. He knocked softly on the open door. Diana spun around instantly. The panic on her face shifted to something else. Something complicated. Somewhere between relief and deep embarrassment. Her jaw tightened. Her posture straightened automatically like a reflex. Like her body refused to let anyone see her undone. Even when she clearly was. Cole. His name came out clipped. Controlled. Ms. Hargrove. He kept his voice neutral. Professional. I knocked twice at the front. Your assistant wasn't at the desk. The Henderson file needs your signature before. The zipper. She said it quietly. Just 2 words. But they cost her something. He could tell. Cole nodded once. He set the Henderson file on the nearest chair without a word. He crossed the room slowly, giving her every opportunity to wave him off, to tell him she had it handled, to rebuild the wall she kept so perfectly maintained between herself and every person in this building. She didn't. She turned her back to him again, slowly, stiffly, like it took everything she had. Cole exhaled quietly and stepped closer. The zipper had caught badly on a thin layer of silk lining. It was delicate work, the kind that required patience, steady hands, and a complete willingness to pretend that the situation wasn't as intimate as it absolutely was. He carefully worked the fabric free with 2 fingers. The office was completely silent. He became suddenly, painfully aware of everything. The soft scent of her perfume. The way her breathing slowed as his hands worked carefully at her back. The small, almost invisible tension that ran down her spine. She was holding herself, so still it looked like effort. Cole focused entirely on the zipper. He told himself this was nothing. Just a practical problem with a practical solution. He was simply helping his boss the same way he would help anyone who was stuck. But his hands told a different story. They were careful in a way that went beyond professional. Gentle in a way that had nothing to do with the fabric. The zipper finally moved. He guided it upward slowly, smoothly, and as it reached the top and the dress settled perfectly into place, Cole started to step back. That was when she spoke. It was barely a whisper, softer than anything he had ever heard from her in 2 years of working under her roof. Don't let go yet. Cole went completely still. 3 words, barely audible, but they landed somewhere deep inside him and didn't move. He didn't let go. 4 seconds, maybe 5. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The city hummed 20 floors below. The morning light stretched long and golden across the office floor. And something shifted in the space between them. Something quiet and enormous at the same time. Then Diana straightened. She cleared her throat softly. Her shoulders squared again. Thank you. Measured. Calm. As if those 3 whispered words had never happened. But Cole's hands still remembered the warmth of her back. And something told him that no matter how hard she tried, she remembered too. Diana moved to her desk like nothing had happened. She smoothed the front of her gown with both hands. She picked up her phone. She scrolled through something with the focused precision of a woman who had never once whispered anything vulnerable to anyone in her entire life. Cole picked up the Henderson file from the chair. He told himself to leave. Sign the file. Walk out. Go back to his desk and spend the rest of the day pretending that the last 5 minutes were completely unremarkable. He almost made it to the door. Cole. He stopped. Diana wasn't looking at him. She was still staring at her phone, but her thumb had stopped scrolling, and that small stillness told him she was choosing her next words very carefully. The Hargrove Foundation Gala is tonight. He knew. Everyone in the building knew. It was the most important event of Diana's professional year. Photographers, donors, board members, the kind of evening where every detail mattered and every appearance was a carefully constructed message about power and stability. I am aware. He kept his voice even. Diana set her phone down. She looked up at him then, fully, directly, and for the first time since he had known her, Cole saw something in her eyes that her perfectly composed expression was failing to hide. She was dreading it, not the gala itself. Something specific about it. Something she hadn't told anyone. My date for this evening canceled. She delivered it like a business update. Flat. Factual. 40 minutes ago. Cole said nothing. The photographers will be positioned at the entrance by 7. She continued. The board members will be watching. After the merger speculation that leaked last quarter, any sign of instability in my personal life will be used as ammunition by people who are already looking for reasons to question my leadership. She was laying out a case. He recognized the structure. He had watched her build arguments in boardrooms for 2 years. But this time the argument was personal, and the careful distance in her voice was working very hard to hide that fact. Cole felt the shape of where this was going. He wasn't ready for it. I need someone credible, Diana said. Someone who already understands discretion. Someone the board has seen around me before and won't find suspicious. The silence that followed was enormous. Cole stared at her. Ms. Hargrove, I'm not asking you to pretend to be something you're not. She cut in before he could finish. I'm asking you to attend one event. Stand beside me for 3 hours. Be professional. Be present. And then we go back to exactly what we are on Monday morning. Cole exhaled slowly through his nose. One part of him understood the logic perfectly. He had always understood her logic. It was one of the things that made working for her both challenging and quietly impressive. But another part of him, the part that still felt the warmth of her back under his hands, knew that 3 hours standing beside Diana Hargrove in an evening gown was not going to be as simple as she was making it sound. I have a daughter. He said it plainly, not as an excuse, as a fact that mattered. Something crossed Diana's face, quick and soft, gone almost before it arrived. How old? 7. She nodded once, slowly, like she was processing more than just the number. I'll arrange care for her this evening. Diana said, Mrs. Pellman in my building is a retired schoolteacher. She is excellent with children and available tonight. I'll cover everything. Cole blinked. She had moved from proposal to solution in under 10 seconds. Of course she had. This was Diana Hargrove. She didn't present problems without already holding the answers. But the fact that she had included his daughter in the solution, without hesitation, without making him feel like his life was an inconvenience, did something unexpected to the wall Cole kept carefully between himself and the rest of the world. It made a small, quiet crack in it. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. One evening, he said. Diana picked up her phone again. One evening, she confirmed. But neither of them looked entirely sure they believed that. The Meridian Grand was the kind of building that made ordinary people feel small. Gold light poured from every window. Black cars lined the entrance in a quiet, expensive procession. Women in stunning gowns moved through the front doors like they had been born for exactly this kind of evening. Men in tailored suits stood straighter just from being inside its walls. Cole had worn his best suit, dark navy, simple, the one he kept for job interviews and parent-teacher nights when he wanted to look like a man who had everything under control. Standing next to Diana Hargrove, he wondered if it was enough. She had emerged from her building at 6:53 exactly. Her dark hair was pinned up with the kind of effortless precision that probably took an hour to achieve. The silver gown moved with her like it had been designed for her specifically. And the way she carried herself, chin level, shoulders back, eyes forward, made it clear that Diana Hargrove did not walk into rooms. She arrived in them. Cole offered his arm at the base of the entrance steps. It was the right thing to do. The professional thing. The thing that made sense for two people playing a specific role for a specific evening. Diana looked at his arm for exactly 1 second before she took it. Her hand settled into the crook of his elbow lightly. But it was there, warm and real and close in a way that made the professional explanation feel suddenly insufficient. The photographers moved immediately. Flashes. Voices calling her name. The choreographed chaos of public attention that Diana absorbed without a single visible flinch. She smiled at exactly the right moments, turned at exactly the right angles, said exactly the right things to exactly the right people. Cole stayed close, steady, present, and he watched her work. He had seen her in boardrooms. He had seen her under pressure. He had seen her dismantle a poorly constructed quarterly report in 4 minutes flat without raising her voice once. But watching her here, moving through this glittering, high-stakes room with such deliberate grace, he saw something he had missed before. How exhausting it was for her. Not the smiling, not the conversations, but the constant, invisible effort of being exactly what everyone in the room needed her to be. Of never once letting the mask slip. Of performing strength so consistently and so completely that no one ever thought to ask if she was tired. Cole thought to ask. He didn't. Not yet. But he thought it. They found their table between a foundation board member named Gerald and a woman named Patricia who clearly adored Diana and spoke about her with the warm, slightly worried energy of someone who cared but knew better than to say so directly. Dinner passed in polished conversation. Cole held his own. Years of client meetings and corporate presentations had given him enough fluency in this language to get by. Diana glanced at him twice during the meal with something that looked almost like quiet approval. Then the music started. It was soft at first, background elegance. But when the foundation chairman took the floor and invited guests to dance before the keynote address, Diana leaned slightly toward Cole and spoke under her breath. "We should dance." He looked at her. "Gerald is watching," she added, as if that explained everything, as if the dancing was purely strategic. Cole stood and offered his hand. She took it. The floor was not crowded yet, which meant there was space. And space meant that there was no practical reason to stand as close as they did when the music found its rhythm and they began to move. His hand rested at her waist. Her hand rested on his shoulder. They moved slowly, carefully, like two people very aware of every point of contact between them. And then Cole looked at her face. Really looked. Beneath the perfect composure. Beneath the polished smile. Beneath 2 years of professional distance and carefully maintained authority. He saw it. The loneliness. Quiet and deep and old. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that just lives in a person's eyes when they think no one is paying close enough attention to notice. Cole noticed, and something in his chest broke open very quietly. His name was Donovan Wells. Cole noticed him before Diana did. He was standing near the bar on the far side of the ballroom. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of man who wore his ambition like a second suit. He held his glass loosely and watched the dance floor with the relaxed confidence of someone who had already decided how the evening was going to end. His eyes were fixed on Diana, not with admiration, with calculation. Cole had worked in corporate environments long enough to know the difference. Admiration looked up, calculation measured, and Donovan Wells was measuring Diana Hargrove from across the room with the quiet precision of a man building a case. Cole kept his expression neutral and leaned slightly closer to Diana. "Donovan Wells is watching you from the bar." He said it quietly, calmly, just information. Something shifted in Diana's posture. Subtle, almost invisible, but Cole felt it through his hand at her waist. A small, involuntary tightening, like a door being locked from the inside. "He's always watching," she said. Her voice carried no emotion, but her jaw had tightened by a fraction. "Who is he to you?" A pause, long enough to mean something. "He sits on the acquisitions board," Diana said carefully. "He has been trying to build a case for a leadership restructure for the past 8 months. He believes I am, she stopped. Chose a different word. Overextended. Cole understood immediately. Donovan Wells didn't think Diana Hargrove was too busy. He thought she was vulnerable, and vulnerable meant replaceable. And tonight, with a canceled date, a last-minute substitute, and the entire board watching, was exactly the kind of moment a man like Donovan had been quietly waiting for. The song ended. They stepped apart with the careful distance of two professionals. But as they moved back toward their table, Donovan Wells moved too, smoothly, purposefully, cutting across the room at an angle that made the interception feel accidental. It wasn't. Diana. He smiled with everything except his eyes. You look extraordinary as always. Donovan. Her voice was polished marble. I didn't realize you'd be attending this year. I wouldn't miss it. He let his gaze slide to Cole with the slow ease of a man who is used to making other people feel small. And who is this? Cole extended his hand before Diana could speak. Cole Bennett. It's good to meet you. Donovan shook it. Brief. Assessing. Bennett. You work with Diana at Hargrove and Lane, don't you? Senior analyst, if I remember correctly. He remembered correctly, and he wanted them both to know that he had done his homework. That's right. Cole said evenly. Donovan's smile sharpened by a degree. Interesting choice of companion for the evening, Diana. I would have thought you'd bring someone from outside the office. Less complicated that way. He let the word complicated sit in the air between them like smoke. But then again, you've always liked to keep things close. It was perfectly crafted, polite enough to survive a public setting, pointed enough to draw blood quietly. Cole felt Diana go very still beside him. This was the moment Donovan had engineered the entire conversation to reach. The moment where the suggestion of impropriety, of poor judgment, of blurred professional lines could be planted in the minds of anyone nearby who happened to be listening. And people were listening. Cole could feel it. He made a decision in under 2 seconds. He turned to Diana, slowly, deliberately, and he looked at her the way a man looks at someone who genuinely matters to him. Not performed, not constructed, something that came from a place he hadn't fully examined yet and didn't have time to examine now. He reached out and tucked a single loose strand of hair gently behind her ear. Diana's breath caught, barely audible, only he was close enough to hear it. Ready to find our seats? He said to her softly, as if Donovan Wells wasn't standing 3 feet away, as if the entire room had simply ceased to matter. Diana looked up at him, and for one unguarded, completely real second, the mask was gone. Yes, she said quietly. I'm ready. Donovan said nothing more, but as Cole guided Diana gently away, he felt the other man's gaze follow them across the room like a cold hand on his back. This wasn't over. Not even close. The gala ended at 10:45. The car ride back was quiet. Not the uncomfortable kind of quiet. The kind that sits between two people who have shared something significant and haven't yet found the words to name it. The city lights moved across the windows in slow, golden ribbons. Diana sat with her hands folded in her lap. Cole watched the road ahead and said nothing. His daughter was safe. He had checked his phone twice during the keynote address. Mrs. Pellman had sent a single text. 3 words. She's fast asleep. It was the most relieving sentence Cole had read in months. The car stopped outside Hargrove and Lane. Diana looked at him. I left some documents on my desk. I need 10 minutes. Cole nodded. I'll wait. But he didn't wait in the lobby. He followed her up. He wasn't entirely sure why. The evening was technically over. The role had been played. The performance was complete. There was no professional reason for him to ride that elevator to the 20th floor at nearly 11 o'clock at night. But he did. The office was dark except for the city glow pressing through the tall windows. Diana moved through the familiar space easily, reaching her desk, shuffling through a stack of folders with practiced efficiency. Cole stood near the window and looked out at the city below. It looked different at night. Quieter. More honest somehow. Like the darkness had stripped away the performance of the daytime and left only what was real. You didn't have to come up, Diana said from her desk. I know. Silence again. But shorter this time. What you did tonight. She stopped. Started again. With Donovan. That wasn't part of the arrangement. Cole turned from the window. No, it wasn't. Diana looked up from the folders. She wasn't holding them anymore. They sat forgotten on the desk in front of her, while she looked at him with an expression that was completely unguarded in a way he had only seen once before. For 4 seconds. In the same office. That same morning. Why did you do it? She asked. Cole held her gaze. Because he was trying to make you feel small. And you're not small, Diana. It was the first time he had used her first name. Neither of them acknowledged it. But they both heard it. Loud and clear and irreversible. Diana looked away first. She pressed her fingers flat against the desk surface. A grounding gesture. The kind people used when something was trying to pull them off balance. I've been doing this alone for a long time. She said it to the desk. Quietly. Like a confession she hadn't planned to make. The gala. The board. The constant. She stopped. Exhaled. People assume that because I built this company from almost nothing that I must prefer it that way. The solitude. The self-sufficiency. She paused. I stopped correcting them. Cole was very still. My daughter asks me sometimes. He said after a moment. She asks why I look sad when I think she's not watching. He let that sit for breath. I tell her I'm just tired. But she's 7, and she already knows the difference. Diana looked up at him then. In the space between them, the professional distance, the hierarchy, the 2 years of carefully maintained boundaries felt suddenly very thin. Like paper held up against a flame. Tonight didn't feel like a performance. Cole said, honest, direct, the way he was when everything else fell away. Not to me. Diana's eyes held his for a long, searching moment. It didn't feel like one to me either. She admitted, and the admitting of it seemed to cost her something real. Something she didn't spend lightly. Cole took 2 steps toward her desk. Not close enough to cross any line, but close enough that the conversation became something different from what it had been 30 seconds ago. What happens Monday? He asked. Diana was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, she said. And for a woman who always had the answer ready, who had built an entire career on never being caught without one, those 3 words were the most honest thing she had ever said to him. Cole nodded slowly. He picked up his jacket from the chair by the door. Then maybe that's where we start, he said quietly. He believed approximately half of that. At 9:47, his desk phone rang. My office, Diana said. 2 words. Then the line went quiet. Cole exhaled. He straightened his jacket. He walked across the floor with the steady, measured pace of a man who was absolutely not nervous in any way whatsoever. He knocked. Come in. She was standing at the window when he entered. Not at her desk. At the window, looking out at the city the same way he had on Friday night, when everything was still finding its shape between them. Cole closed the door behind him. Diana turned. She was holding 2 cups of coffee. She extended one toward him without a word. He crossed the room and took it. Their fingers didn't touch. But the gesture itself, the simple, unannounced thoughtfulness of it, said something that neither of them had been able to say out loud yet. I've been thinking, she said. So have I, he replied. A small pause, the kind that made room for honesty. I called Patricia this morning, Diana said, from a gala. She wants to know if your daughter likes books. Apparently, she runs a small reading group on Saturday mornings, and she thought. Diana stopped. A rare color rose quietly in her cheeks. I told her I would ask. Cole stared at her. This woman, this brilliant, guarded, endlessly composed woman had spent part of her Monday morning thinking about his daughter's Saturday mornings. Something in his chest became very warm and very certain at the same time. She loves books, he said. His voice was quieter than he intended, especially the ones about animals that go on adventures. Diana smiled. Not the polished gala smile. Not the boardroom smile. Something smaller and more real than either of those. Something that reached all the way to her eyes and stayed there. I don't know how to do this slowly, she admitted, honest in the way she had been on Friday night. The way that cost her something. I don't have a lot of practice with slow. I don't need slow, Cole said. I just need real. Diana looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Then she turned back to the window. But this time she stood slightly closer to where he was standing. Close enough that the city stretched out before both of them at the same time. Like a shared view. Like the beginning of shared something. There's a park near my building, she said softly. On Saturday mornings. After Patricia's reading group. Cole looked at her profile against the light. We'll be there, he said. And that was all. No grand declarations. No dramatic moment that the whole office witnessed. Just 2 quietly lonely people choosing, slowly, carefully, and with everything they had, to stop being lonely in the direction of each other. Cole's daughter had been right at breakfast. He did look different, because for the first time in a very long time, the man looking back at him in the mirror that morning had looked like someone who was walking towards something real. And he wasn't letting go. Not yet. Not ever. If this story found a quiet place in your heart, you already know what to do. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today.